radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 126, recorded on Friday, June 7th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we look into the historic conviction of former president and current 34-time felon. Put all the air horns in. All the air horns. Donald Trump. But first, the headlines.
I got along with him well, although he did announce the other day that he'd much rather see Biden as president. And I agree with him. I agree.
First up in the headlines, we've got an update on our most popular episode ever.
Yeah.
Episode 44, The Epoch Times. The Epoch Times CFO has been charged with money laundering.
No. Crazy white ringers are not following the law again?
Weidong Bill Guan, the chief financial officer for the Epoch Times, was charged Monday with laundering at least $67 million. In illegally obtained funds. After the alleged scheme began in 2020, the Epoch Times revenue jumped from almost $15.5 million the year before to over $70 million, according to federal tax filings. And this obviously came at a time where other newspapers were shrinking and struggling to survive.
Right.
For some reason, this crazy right-wing conspiracy rag was growing at an exponential rate.
See, now what would concern me, though, is I feel like with today's crazy right-wing cast, how they just throw money at anything nowadays, I can almost see it still being a realistic probability. Because usually when you see that big of a jump that quickly, okay, something illegal's happening. But nowadays it's just like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, right-wing idiots are just funding the hell out of this.
Right. I mean, other than during COVID, they're not really...
They're not relevant.
A thought leader
in
the right-wing sphere. It's all anti-China stuff.
I'm seeing so many billboards that say they're America's #1 trusted news source.
Yeah. Well, according to...
with some random guy's face on it.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
Ew.
said that...
Is he really?
Yep. It's not me reading it.
Oh my...
It's the brainworms. But yeah, he said that's his favorite newspaper, and he reads it every day.
Shut up. No.
Yep.
Oh.
And this also, that rise from 15 million in income to 70 million in 2020, oddly corresponded with their millions in ad spending in 2020 in support of the Trump campaign.
Of course. Just of course.
And how they made all that money? Well, working with an Epoch Times foreign office team known as Make Money Online, or MMO. Which that could get a little confusing, I think.
So if it's a MMO,
we've got a
game
Chinese
system.
MMO team. Oh, you're gold farming, like Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
No, we're laundering money. Guan directed the team to purchase prepaid debit cards at a discount that were loaded with money obtained through various illegal means, including fraudulent unemployment insurance funds from stolen identities.
Oh, cool. So really illegal stuff.
Right. So, you can buy those cards at a steep discount because the people that created them used stolen identities, stolen credit cards, things like that.
What a bargain.
To buy them, so they don't care what they get paid for them. Whatever they get is great. It's a good way to launder money, as long as you have somebody like the Epoch Times willing to make those large transactions and buy millions of dollars of them. This money was then funneled back to the Epoch Times and Guan's own personal accounts. The funny thing is...
It's not already funny?
Both the banks and even the cryptocurrency platform involved, because they bought it all with cryptocurrency.
Oh, of course they did.
Noted that the likely fraudulent nature of these transactions and contacted Guan and the Epoch Times, who then lied about the origins of the money, saying they were proceeds from the MMO team's work, increases in newspaper subscriptions, or, like you said, donations from the public.
Just donations. Hey, we got the money from people.
When banks were asking for the paperwork to prove all of this, Guan claimed that they don't keep records from donations unless somebody asks for an invoice.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't have the paperwork.
Man, if the cryptocurrency people...
Right. are like, oh, I don't know, man. This is real shady.
The literal financial Wild West out there, those little sorry SOBs come to you saying, hey, I think what you're doing is fraudulent for what we are. We've got a problem, man.
And, it's just a tiny, irrelevant, right-wing conspiracy, anti-Chinese newspaper, right? I mean, it's run by a Chinese cult, and they also run that Shen Yun dance troupe. If you want to learn any more about that, that is what we cover in the Epic Times episode. But they're not really relevant in conservative politics, right?
I just read your point about this, and now I'm angry.
Well, last year, Representative Ralph Norman, Republican from South Carolina, read a statement into the Congressional Record recognizing the Epic Times for its best practices and highest principles of journalism.
Ew.
And also in January, corrupt idiot and Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson hosted a screening of The Real Story of January 6th.
Oh, no.
A right-wing propaganda film produced by the Epic Times, full of conspiracy theories and lies about the failed Capitol insurrection.
Amazing. Just amazing.
Drain in the swamp.
And we're going to stay in Wisconsin because finally, Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul has filed felony charges relating to the fake elector scheme relating to the 2020 election. Kaul filed those charges earlier this week for 2 attorneys and an aide who helped submit those paperwork to make sure that Trump tried to win in 2020. Those people who were charged were Jim Tropis, Trump's Wisconsin attorney, Kenneth Cheesebro,
Cheesebro.
who I think we've talked about at previous times.
We've also talked about Jim Troupis.
I think we have as well, yeah. Who was advising the campaign, and Mike Roman, Trump's director of Election Day operations, who really botched that one, didn't he? And like I said before, Wisconsin finally followed the other states, including Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and Georgia, and actually charging these idiots with real crimes.
I guess better late than never. I mean, certainly I want to see a couple more people charged, including my own horrible representative, Scott Fitzgerald.
I 100%, who literally rented out the room in the Capitol to make it happen. Yeah,
Yes.
I 100% agree.
And also all 9 of the fake electors should be charged as well.
So that was both of my thoughts as well with this. Is number one, about damn time. It has been way too long. I don't know what Josh Kaul was waiting for with this whole thing. This was just insane that he took this long to do this thing. And number two, I'm sorry, only 3 people?
Right.
What? If you look at like Arizona's election stuff, they have like 12 to 15 people on there. Where is that for us? I know a fact.
And we know the names.
Yes, I know for a fact we have way more people who took part in this scheme
Right.
and who broke the law.
Right.
Where are they? And also, by the way, I'm so happy that in the last story you also quoted Ron Johnson because in this story, America's dumbest senator and absolute.
Tommy Tuberville.
I don't know, man. It's a race to the bottom with those two.
They're pretty close. They're neck and neck.
An absolute embarrassment to Wisconsin. Ron Johnson tweeted out this in response. This is outrageous. Now Democrats are weaponizing Wisconsin's judiciary. Apparently, conservative lawyers advising clients is illegal under Democrat tyranny.
Advising clients to
Break
file
the law.
fraudulent paperwork and try to overturn the will of the people of Wisconsin and change our votes.
He continues by saying, Democrats are turning America into a banana republic. Welcome to the new banana republic, Jason. Where
They're a little expensive for me. I stick to Kohl's personally.
I hate that you made that joke because I saw several clips, and we'll talk about it in the main segment. I think I've seen several clips of hosts on Fox News make that exact same joke. Well, I guess I could go shop at Banana Republic because that's what we're in right now.
I don't know if they're even still around.
I don't know either.
They just used to sell khakis in the mall.
And
like $100.
And like really
pair of
expensive
khakis.
polos. So yes.
And as we know, Ron Johnson was involved in this scheme as well. Jim Troupis contacted Ron Johnson to try to make him be the one to give the paperwork
to Mike Pence. Absolutely. And there are text messages showing this verbatim.
And Ron Johnson, in response, connected him to his own chief of staff.
Yep.
Who was at least responsible enough to ask Pence's staff if this was allowed, and they told him no.
And then he ran away with his tail between his legs.
Oh, no, then he got a senator from Philadelphia to do it instead.
Yeah. But at least it's finally happening. It's good news, right? We're in good news.
Better than nothing,
this
for
is
sure.
better than nothing.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Good job, Josh Kaul. It's about damn time. And let's go into some not as good news.
Pretty much the opposite of good news.
But on the same vein, of being very frustrated with Democrats. See? Segue. We got to talk about Gaza and Israel. A couple weeks ago, Israel has officially crossed Biden's red line and started bombing Rafah, which, if you guys heard in our previous episodes, that's all Biden wouldn't shut up about. So if they went into Rafah, no more weapons. They went into Rafah, no more weapons. I couldn't have American weapons being used in Rafah to hurt innocent civilians. That is a red line I will not cross.
And then American weapons were used in the bombing of a
School
well, and at the tent
and the tents.
encampment.
Yep. And I believe in our hospital as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, how's that red line doing for you, Biden?
Yeah.
Granted, I don't even want to say, man, okay. I hate because every time I try to like talk about what's going on, I always feel like I have to be like some of the weird Biden apologist when I just say like random facts because of how bad this is. So I need to just clarify again, I'm not happy with this. I am livid that Biden has continued to let this go on and on and on. And then now it's just moving the goalposts left and right because it doesn't matter at the end of the day what happens to the Palestinian people.
Right. His support for Israel is more important to him than the lives of Palestinians.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, did you see how during Trump's interview, I don't remember what it was. Was it with Time? It was something like whatever. He actually used Palestinian as like a pejorative now. It's like,
Yeah, that was with Fox.
Oh, it
There's
was
no
Fox.
way he's
Yes, it
giving
was with
Time
Fox.
an interview.
with Sean Hannity, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe Sean Hannity.
Yeah, where he's like, started calling Chuck Schumer something a Palestinian now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oofta.
Right.
Even Schumer has become like a Palestinian. Chuck Schumer, Jewish, always strong for Israel. He's become like a Palestinian.
Now, Grant, in Biden's very, 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 very tiny defense, since then he has called for a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, and he announced it that Israel has proposed a deal that would have a complete ceasefire for Hamas and put an end to this whole thing. Israeli hostages would be released, Palestinian hostages would be released, troops would remove themselves from Gaza. Decent deal.
And then Israel immediately refuted the details.
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? Is that not only was this a very similar deal that Hamas has already been proposing to Israel, when Biden said this was an Israeli deal to Hamas to make Israel look good, Israel came out and said, oh, no. Don't think that we're good guys here. I want to clarify. We are definitely the bad guys.
Right. I mean, their stipulation is the removal of every Hamas soldier.
Right.
Which is a meaningless distinction. It doesn't, like, as we saw, we were talking about with Donald Trump, where Palestinian equals terrorist in his mind. That's exactly where Benjamin Netanyahu has been.
Correct. And he has not moved from that ledge since this began. And to make matters even worse, Congress has recently invited Benjamin Netanyahu to address U.S. Congress on what is happening in Gaza. Many Democrats have spoken harshly against this, including Bernie Sanders, who called Netanyahu a war criminal during a floor speech. And so this is not a Republicans gonna Republican thing. This is a bipartisan leadership action. And I can't even understand why Democrats would want to do this. Because this isn't even like okay, he's gonna come maybe testify and be questioned in front of Congress. No.
He should be terrified to come to the U.S.
Right. No, he's going to give a literal address and just give nonstop Israeli propaganda left and right and then turn off the Zoom call.
I do want to clarify, because he's wanted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court, not for his own personal say. I wanted to finish that sentence.
Sure.
Because he should be arrested if he comes to the U.S. But of course, we don't follow the International Criminal Court, and we wouldn't do anything. Now, Putin, who is basically doing the exact same thing in Ukraine.
Yep.
That's, war crimes, bad guy. We'd throw him in jail if he came to the U.S., but not our ally.
Yeah, but for Netanyahu,
Yeah, it just shows how
he gets to
hypocritical
address
it is.
Congress.
Yeah.
Did you also see where Biden was asked if Netanyahu was doing this just because of political pressures and to stay in power?
I don't believe I saw that, no.
So he was asked about that, or he was asked if he thought that this is why Netanyahu's still being as aggressive as he is.
Because he is currently on trial still for corruption.
Right.
Mhm.
And Biden said, well, I think it's very adequate for a lot of people to think that's what's happening. He never said that's what he thinks. He's like, sure, why not? The damn administration was so scared they had to walk that back. Saying, oh, no, we didn't mean anything by that. We think he's doing just fine. Because they're terrified of calling a spade here. You could still be supportive of Israel and call a spade, but they won't do it. And it's absolutely disingenuous at this point. It's infuriating. I don't know how to even explain it anymore, other than all the words we've used for months now.
Honestly, and I know it's like, yeah, yes, we're supporting an active genocide. But the thing is, and the reason why I'm not surprised at all, I don't think this is unique, we have been supporting the oppression and the slow ethnic cleansing of Palestinians out of the West Bank and Gaza for 30 years now?
Yeah, I was going to say longer than that, I think.
So it's not really, it doesn't come as any surprise to me that the U.S. would do this. It's just, this is all happening much faster now.
Right.
Moving back to the U.S., the political system has weaponized the Department of Justice, Joe.
I agree.
Lawfare has begun.
I hate the name lawfare. I hate that word so much.
The trial of Hunter Biden began on Monday.
Flip the tables! Rigged!
Joe Biden's son, Hunter, has been charged on 3 felony gun-related charges, 2 for falsely stating that he did not have a drug addiction, and the other for possessing a handgun illegally. I believe he owned this gun for 11 days before, I think it was Bo's widow, his brother's widow, threw it out because she thought that he would harm himself with it, which probably would have happened. Hunter Biden had reached a plea deal for these charges, combined with tax charges that he is also facing, but the Trump-appointed judge overseeing this firearms case, Mary Ellen Noreika, objected, along with a cavalcade of Republican officials. You know, the DOJ was giving Hunter Biden a sweetheart deal.
Right, I remember we covered that.
Yep, so that's what this led to. If convicted, which is highly likely, given
I think it's going to happen.
Given the facts in this case, Biden is subject to a 10-year maximum sentence, but is likely to get much less. Now, is he likely to get much less because he's the son of a president?
Probably.
Probably a little bit, but also he doesn't need to be, right? He's just a rich and powerful white kid.
Yep.
By kid, he's like in his 50s now, right? Joe Biden's 100. Yeah, he has the privilege that he always had.
Correct.
And it doesn't really matter that specifically Joe Biden is his dad. He was always going to get kind of a light sentence. And I think that will be echoed in our main topic today as well. And of course, because of this trial, President Joe Biden has come forward to call the entire process a rigged witch hunt. He has attacked the judge's family, the jury, the court stenographer as being biased conservative hacks out to destroy him and the country. Oh, wait, no, he didn't. Actually, he said, as the president, I don't and won't comment on pending federal cases, but as a dad, I have boundless love for my son, confidence in him, and respect for his strength. Our family has been through a lot together, and Jill and I are going to continue to be there for Hunter and our family with our love and support.
That corrupt, tyrannical dictator.
He also later added that he would accept the outcome of the trial and would not pardon Hunter if he is convicted.
I knew it! Corruption! Corruption! Rigged! Wait!
Well, if you were feeling good about Joe Biden there after that wonderful thought about his son and how much he loves and supports him even though he's a screw-up, let me ruin that real quick.
Oh, no.
And talk about Joe Biden's latest executive order.
Uh-oh.
On Tuesday, President Biden signed an executive order that turns away migrants seeking asylum within the U.S. The restrictions take effect when the 7-day average of daily border crossings exceeds 2,500. As the current average is higher than that, the new system took effect on Wednesday and will remain in effect until 2 weeks after Border Patrol's weekly average of migrant apprehensions drops below 1,500 people per day.
So basically, as of right now, the border is closed.
To asylum seekers, correct. That hasn't happened since July 2020 in the early days of COVID. And almost 60% of the monthly averages since the year 2000, so the last 24 years, have been above that threshold. And, you know, the whole thing about the population kind of tends to go up as time goes on.
I don't know what you're talking. I thought we were in a declining population. We got to be worried about starvation.
Elon Musk has got to have more kids and
something.
So yeah, the border for asylum seekers, the southern border might stay closed indefinitely.
And this is very similar to what Trump has done. And I think the idea of saying that this was not happening since 2020 is, I'm hoping, intentional because, again, call a spade a spade. This is Trump level crap.
It is.
100%. If Trump was doing this, we would be losing our damn minds. And we shouldn't sit here and pretend that because Biden did it, and for fact, we know he's doing it because it's a campaign move. He knows that moderates are concerned about the border, so he's trying to take action on the border.
This executive action calls on U.S. authorities to deport asylum seekers from U.S. soil without affording them a chance to seek protection, making exceptions only for unaccompanied children, severe trafficking victims, and those who can prove a very high threshold of fear of return. And as you said, this new asylum shutdown resembles the Trump administration's 2018 attempt to ban asylum access with no numerical limits that was struck down by federal courts because U.S. law states clearly that people on U.S. soil may request asylum without regard to how they arrive. This new executive order will also not likely survive the legal process either, as the ACLU has already begun drafting a lawsuit.
Good, as they should.
Yes, and they're the ones who also got that 2018 Trump executive order shot down. Unsurprisingly, again, the move is not popular even among Republicans, who view it as a transparent political stunt, as you said, before the election, and an ineffective measure against the immigration flood that Biden himself somehow caused, even though, as we said, has been going on.
And this
forever.
is what makes me so damn angry about this move. There has been research that shows that when Democrats are afraid, or not just Democrats in like America, but even like liberals in other countries as well, are afraid of being too weak on crime or whatever it may be, whatever the issues are, they will take moderate positions on things. When they do take those moderate positions on things, it doesn't make a difference in the voter turnout for them. And this has been shown time and time again. And I don't know what the Biden administration or campaign was thinking with this move, because the border is already one of the most politicized issues we have right now in the country. Biden, because you're a clear listener to the show, obviously. I don't know if you don't know this, but you've already been labeled as open borders, radical leftists. It doesn't matter. They're still saying that, even though they're the ones who killed the border security bill that Democrats put forward.
Well, Beanie Baby Tim Pool has already been pushing a conspiracy that somehow this is a plot to grant amnesty to immigrants.
Right.
Somehow.
So I'm going to actually quote, because this was one of my favorite things ever said in a presidential debate ever. Pete Buttigieg back in the 2020 debates, like, if they're going to call us radical leftists and socialists anyway, why are we placating to them? Moderates aren't going to care that Biden failed to try to close the border. They're not going to care. They still see it as a problem anyway. So stick to your guns and keep doing what you know is the right thing to do anyway, and stop placating to random crazy right-wingers who are going to, like you said, hate you no matter what you do.
And if you want the official party line from the Biden administration, they say that they were left with no choice after bipartisan legislation failed to pass the House, after Donald Trump voiced his displeasure with Republicans giving his political opponent a victory before the election.
That proves my point. You did it as a campaign move, and it's the wrong one because you're trying to act like a moderate, middle-of-the-road candidate here. But no one cares. You're just going to piss off everybody.
I think the more important thing is this will likely change nothing except make things even harder on asylum seekers who are already at a heavy disadvantage in our system, as this does nothing to address the real problems. Inadequate infrastructure at border crossings, lack of asylum officials and judges, and the 6-year backlog currently clogging the asylum process.
Yep.
If you want to lower the number of migrants seeking asylum at the border, process the ones that you already have. Get them through. Then you're gonna be able to process all of the people that are coming in, instead of just giving them a court date, handing them on their way, and then they're stuck in the system indefinitely, never sure when, they might either get finally accepted into the country or deported.
And look, I also understand that when you have such a, I guess you could say, diverse country with lots of different opinions about issues like immigration or what's happening in Israel and Palestine, and you try to walk the tightrope, and it's extremely hard to do. I understand that. And I want to try to give anyone who'd be in the president's seat that type of benefit of the doubt. But Biden and his administration is the perfect example of how to try to walk that tightrope and fail every single time and do every single thing wrong to make everybody angry and hate you.
Right. And they're just not doing the right thing, which is really what it boils down to. Gaza, there are people being murdered on a daily basis. It's an ongoing genocide.
But this is why Trump's so much better at this than Biden, because at least Trump sticks to his guns. Biden keeps going back and forth trying to do the both sides thing, and his policies make no sense.
Right. Well, you just give in to the right-wing xenophobia and fear-mongering over the border by saying like, oh yeah, well, it's a real problem. We need to fix it. Instead of just saying like, look, no, it's not a problem. We have space for all of these people. If they're legitimately seeking asylum and they can't go back to their home country, welcome to America. It's what we've always done. It's what we've done for hundreds of years since our founding. We are a country of immigrants. We're a very large country. It's a very underpopulated country. We have the resources. We're the richest country in the world. Immigrants only make our country stronger. They provide skills and experiences that are unique and useful. And there is no reason to, again, give into conservative racism by accepting their premise that this is some kind of attack on our country.
Right. Well, and that's my big thing too, is because you can still have a lot of the same border security that a lot of people would want. Fine. You know, I think about the constant rhetoric from right wingers and Republicans, like, well, what about all the drug traffickers, and what about all the fentanyl, and what about all the sex traffickers? Yeah, we should have things in place to figure that stuff out. That's fine.
Look, that ain't how you traffic drugs anyway.
But sure,
like
but you get my point. I'm trying to right, but you get my point. Like I'm trying,
Yeah.
like you can have all that even then and still have a vibrant immigration policy, and we don't. Why? It's because Republicans do not care about the policies. They don't like the people. That's why. And you were just saying it right now before I rudely interrupted you, by the way. That's why you have so many Republicans calling it an invasion, an attack on us. That's why you have
Poisoning the blood of America is what Donald Trump said.
Or I think about, do you remember the old Ted Cruz quote where it's like, well, if we don't do something about the border soon, we're going to have a taco truck on every corner. That's what we're talking about. They just hate the people.
American immigration policy has always been racist from its inception.
Yes, 100%.
And if you don't believe me, look it up. We have zero laws for white Europeans, and we only started limiting Chinese and Asians coming into the country. It's been a racist policy from the start, and it continues to be so.
So then to finish this whole segment out, then we should then finish it by saying Biden should not give in to this nonsense racist rhetoric.
Exactly.
Point done. Get better, Biden. Are we getting our progressive leftist cred yet? Like, are we doing enough Biden bashing? Are we still considered?
I'm still waiting for that
Biden
call from Sam Cedars. Not happening.
I mean, I think there's many reasons why we're not getting the call from Sam Cedar. And I don't think being too moderate's one of them.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
On Foxed in the Head this week.
We got COVID madness. Woo!
On Monday, Dr. Anthony Fauci, boo, testified before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic.
Something we should be talking about in 2024.
They should be talking about how we can improve our response in the future because, you know, we had so many deaths.
Well, you know what? Okay, I'll even give that to you. We actually should still be talking about because it's still affecting the country at this point. Like, we should talk about endemic procedures, endemic policy to make sure that we recover as best as we can. And then, like you said, look ahead.
Right,
to
and
when we
still
should do it again.
protect vulnerable populations.
Yeah. Okay, you know what?
Yeah.
You sold me. Fauci should be in front of Congress right now. Go get him, Fauci.
Yeah, well, instead we didn't talk about anything useful.
Oh.
And right from the start, my faith in humanity, whatever little I had left, quickly evaporated. In the gallery, there were multiple people wearing Got Ivermectin t-shirts.
No.
And there were even two meatheads who seemed deliberately placed behind and on both sides of Dr. Fauci so that they were always visible to the camera while he was speaking. They continuously shook their heads whenever he made statements and made faces during his testimony. One was even removed from the hearing after standing and shouting that Dr. Fauci belonged in prison.
Cool.
They were both wearing Ashley Babbitt t-shirts.
Oh my God.
And it even turned out that the one who was escorted out was a convicted January 6th insurrectionist who was sentenced to 42 months in prison but was released on parole on May 20th.
Great.
So the guy barely made it 10 days out, and somehow he's allowed in a congressional hearing?
No kidding.
How do the Capitol Police feel about that?
I mean, no more inept than usual, I'm guessing.
The highlight
Oh no.
of the hearing was, of course, the questioning from the bleach blonde, bad-built butch body representative from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So let's listen to her very researched,
And serious.
questioning
What we'd
of,
expect from the highest leaders of our country.
Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Mr. Fauci, you were quoted on CBS Face the Nation saying it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes, you said you represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci? Yes or
Again,
no? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no
Yes,
answer.
it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent.
Oh,
But this, as director of the NIH, you did sign off on these so-called scientific experiments. And as a dog lover, I want to tell you this is disgusting and evil, what you signed off on, and these experiments that happened to beagles paid for by the American taxpayer. And I want you to know Americans don't pay their taxes for animals to be tortured like this. So the type of science that you are representing, Mr. Fauci, is abhorrent, and it needs to stop.
Are you or are you not a representative of the Lollipop Guild? So to clarify, because
right.
you're not going to know what she's talking about, she was holding up a photo of two beagles that seem to be involved in some sort of scientific experimentation.
All right.
The photo originates from a sand flea experiment involving beagles in the North African country of Tunisia. That incorrectly listed the NIH, the National Institute of Health, as a financial sponsor when it was first published in 2021.
So it was a grant, basically.
It wasn't. That was actually later retracted.
Oh.
Because the NIH had nothing to do with it.
Oh.
So she's just propagating a false narrative.
Oh, so it's BS.
Like she always does.
Shocker.
And it was something that we knew in 2021 was fake. Because at that time, as well, Dr. Fauci got all sorts of threats from this being circulated in right-wing circles. And even with that disregarded, animal experimentation, no matter how you feel about it, is legal, both in this country and around the world. It is unfortunate and perhaps needs to be examined and phased out. It is a part of science. And I know, look at this picture of these dogs being experimented on. Yeah, it doesn't look good, but it doesn't have anything, one, to do with COVID.
Right.
Or two, it's not like a gotcha on science.
Right. Well,
Do you represent science?
and I'd even say, okay, two things. Number one with that. Yes, obviously, Fauci screwed up when he said that in the original interview anyway. He doesn't represent all science. That's a stupid quote that he flubbed. Fine, whatever. I don't care. But even then, it's like, then just say it. Just say, no, that was a flub on my part. You're like, I'm a scientist and I do not represent all of science. However,
Yeah, I'm not Neil deGrasse Tyson.
right. Like, just say it. Who cares? Marjorie Greene's going to say whatever she wants anyway.
Right.
And then even then it's like, oh, he said he admitted it. He doesn't represent all science. Okay.
So you were lying. And yes, I lied. I thought I was the big shot and that I represented all of science. I was trying to fool everybody. You found me out.
But then again, if you want, I know she isn't here for that conversation, but if you want to have the conversation as the head of the NIH, he is a major representative of a government science foundation. Like, he is the spokesperson.
Mm-hmm. And he
that.
was the medical advisor to the president as well.
Right. So in a weird way, he is kind of representing at least some kinds of science.
Right. But yeah, that's not, she was there for these weird grandstanding
Things.
that she's wrong and it's a debunked conspiracy theory like everything she's ever said. But she was certainly far from done.
It gets worse from the Beagles.
Yeah, the Beagles is tame. That's just getting you in.
They start with the Beagles, man.
Mr. Fauci, you also represent the type of science where you confess that you made up the COVID rules, including
I didn't hear what you
6
said.
feet social distancing and masking of children.
I never
You
said I made anything up.
You admitted that you made it up. You
I
made it
didn't
up
say
as you went.
I made it up.
So are you saying this is fake news, Mr.
I
Fauci?
didn't say I made anything up.
What did you say?
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared.
But this is science.
What does dogs have to do with anything that we're talking about today?
These are scientific experiments. This is what you signed off on. But you also told the American people they had to distance by 6 feet. They had to wear masks. But let's also talk a little bit further about the type of science that you represent. NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers, a fact that's been hidden. Let's talk about the fact about, is it right for scientists and doctors getting paid by the American people, government taxpayer paychecks, to get patents where they're paid millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in royalty fees, especially when the NIH and these government agencies, most powerful agencies in our country, are recommending medical suggestions and advice and making up guidelines like 6 feet distancing and masking of children? Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor. You're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer. I want to talk about this right here.
Mr. Chairman,
Fauci,
objection.
I reclaim my
Mr. Chairman,
time.
objection.
I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time, Mr. Raskin.
Gentlelady will suspend.
Mr. Chairman,
Point of order.
just in terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor just because we don't want him to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in
Gentlelady will
prison.
suspend. And the gentlelady should recognize the doctor as a doctor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is this what we have become? Is this what we have devolved into?
And yes, it is what you have become.
So, okay, hang on. My head's spinning a little bit. So we were talking about beagles.
Yeah.
And then we went to how the 6 foot rule was made up.
Right. And that was a recommendation by the CDC.
And that connects to the beagles.
And because there's no direct, there was no study done on how far you needed to be away from somebody to lower the transmission probability for a newly discovered coronavirus. It was just, 6 feet's a decent number. You'd have to really spit pretty hard to get your
stuff
particles over there.
Right.
And it would make sense to anyone who wasn't an absolute lunatic why they might suggest that you want to stay about 6 feet away from strangers. The way they present it, you couldn't be within 6 feet of your own family. You couldn't hug your own kids. You had to stay 6 feet away from them. Couldn't sleep in the same bed with your spouse. You had to be 6 feet away. What kind of stupid, crazy... None of these people even followed any of these guidelines anyway. They weren't rules. No one went to jail for not social distancing or not wearing a mask. These people didn't do any of that anyway. So what are they complaining about?
Well, and then did Marjorie Taylor Greene just become a socialist and a communist?
Right. She also, I agree with Comrade Green that we should nationalize all of this medical research that we're paying for anyway and letting pharmaceutical companies make billions of dollars off of. Agreed.
No, hold on, because that wasn't her problem. Her problem wasn't that the pharmaceutical companies were making bank on it. Her problem was that there were doctors and researchers getting money for their work. And it's like, sure, I guess if you want to say, if you work for the government, what you do and what you produce from that is owned by the government. Therefore, you don't receive royalties from that.
Yeah, I agreed.
Fine.
You should never be able to patent.
But then go a step further, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and criticize the multi-billion-dollar companies.
Right. The government should own that research and the products that it derives and own the patents on those and make it much more reasonable for everyone to get those drugs, and that would resolve our huge issue with the cost of medical care in this country. Problem solved. What a wonderful idea, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That was a roller coaster. we went from...
And someone a little bit more coherent later on did ask Dr. Fauci if he received any of that $71 million or whatever it was. And he said that he has one patent that's more than 20 years old that he thinks he received about $120 in royalties on during COVID. So, big money Fauci.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's close it out.
Let's bring this train to the station. I'm ready.
And hear the final clip we have.
I don't know where this is going to go next. We got beagles and socialism, but
who is or isn't a doctor?
And we didn't even talk about that part, for God's sakes. Jesus.
He's not a doctor during my time. He's a criminal and should be in jail.
Prison. Okay.
Not like the convicted felon that I support.
So that's completely unacceptable to be able to deny Dr. Fauci, who's here, a respected member of the medical community, his title. And that's actually a personal attack on his character.
And I have instructed her.
He's not respected.
And I've instructed her to address him as a doctor.
I'm not addressing him as doctor. You know what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
No, she did it.
She did it.
She called him a doctor.
Oh.
That's what...
I think she just Karen'd the government.
Georgia. People of Georgia. What the are you doing? Anyone else, literally anyone else. What is going on down there?
Oof.
Instead, we get nature's cruelest mistake. That is anyone else. Who ran against her in the primaries? How did they not win?
Well, Mara, she beat the incumbent to win. She's a woman of the people of Georgia.
And she was known as like a QAnon queen right from the start.
She was. And they liked her anyway.
So, as I said, we ended up learning absolutely nothing from these hearings. It was just more and more of these conspiracy theories being peddled by Republicans who they have convinced themselves that masks didn't do anything, social distancing didn't do anything, the vaccines were just a big lie to make money.
And people are dying left and right.
Yeah, everyone's getting killed by the vaccine. That is the reality that most conservatives live in. So that's all they were interested in talking about, which is all just completely false and provably false, but they don't accept reality.
Right.
So you cannot have an intelligent conversation on this topic. We came up with so many better things to talk about.
In about 5 seconds.
Right. Both on the pandemic that happened in 2020 and in its ongoing effects and what we should be doing to mitigate those and what we should be doing in the future to prepare the next time so we don't have such a poor outcome.
And I'll even give you one better. You can just say, okay, let's do a reflection and analysis. What did we do well? What did we do wrong? Because I'm sure to the Republicans, again, I'm trying to be nice here, to the Republicans' benefit of the doubt, there were a ton of things we did wrong. A lot of those things were wrong because of Republicans. But I'm sure there were still a ton of things procedurally that we did wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the vaccines weren't nearly as effective as they were being marketed as initially.
Not at all.
Which, like, how do we improve the studies so that we have better data next time?
Yeah.
Nope, none of that. That's not where we're like, why did you make the vaccine that kills everybody?
Why do you hate beagles? Go to jail. No, I won't call him Dr. Mister.
Yeah, that is what Congress is with
clowns, Republicans.
Yeah, mega Trumpy Republicans. It's impossible to actually do anything.
Correct. And this is why, even though Democrats are bad and they annoy the hell out of us a lot of times, they're mountains, light years, whatever gigantic
parsecs.
at least 200 football fields better. Anything other than metric, better than Republicans. Without a doubt, period, end of story.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Let's talk about some good news. Donald Trump has recently been convicted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
too many
10,
to even count.
34 times on felony charges due to the hush money porn star trial in New York. He is officially a convicted felon. We are getting so much good use out of these. Best dollar you ever spent.
Yep. Now, it was surprising to me that he was convicted on all 34 counts. Kind of surprised about that. And that it was so quick. They came back last Thursday.
I was legitimately nervous. I don't know. I didn't think there was going to be like some weird halfway thing, but
like a hung jury or...
Well, I didn't think they were going to split the not guilty and guilty verdicts. I was concerned about the hung jury, and I think we talked about it before. If he didn't get convicted, it's game over. He had to be convicted to have us have any chance to win in 2024. And I mean, man, I don't know. To have such a nice, swift decision on him for once, after the nonsense that we have been going through over and over again for all these years, feels good.
Yeah. And just to get like the big myths out of the way right off the bat about these charges were just made up, they should have never been felonies, they should have been misdemeanors. Let's go over it.
All right.
The 34 felony counts were falsification of business records in the first degree. A violation in the first degree occurs when a person falsifies business records with an intent to defraud. That includes an attempt to commit, aid, or conceal another crime. In this case, violating state and federal campaign finance laws and violating state tax laws. That is why Donald Trump was charged with felonies in the state of New York. It happens all the time.
It does.
These cases have been tried exactly the same as this.
It has.
Thousands of times. Even the current DA, Alvin Bragg, there are over 70 cases pending that are also this same statute, first degree felony charges.
But those are all political
witch hunts.
Witch hunts?
Yeah.
I'm not understanding.
They're all former presidents.
Yeah, I don't get your logic here. How can this be a witch hunt if others are doing it?
We have a lot of witches in New York.
I mean, they probably do. There's a lot of Wiccans over there.
Sentencing will be on July 11th, only days before Trump will be nominated as the Republican presidential candidate at the Republican National Convention right here in Milwaukee.
Oh, what amazing timing.
And reportedly, the RNC is preparing for the potential of Trump being in prison or on house arrest during the convention.
Again, real trustworthy party when that's what they have to do for their presidential nominee.
So I'm just going to go through some questions here and we'll talk about it. Is Trump likely to go to jail?
Throw him in solitary. He has no chance to get out. 80 years.
It's all a setup by the Biden administration. Well, unfortunately, no. While there have been, as I said, many examples of others convicted on similar charges that have been sentenced to prison.
But were they rich and white?
Given Trump's miraculously clean criminal record up until recently, and his status as a former president and current candidate, it is much more likely that he is given a fine and probation.
Like, we'll be lucky if he gets house arrest, to be honest.
Yeah, I doubt that he's going to get... They won't do it because they don't want to be seen as preventing him from campaigning.
Right.
I do wonder how it will work with him having to campaign and getting permission from his parole officer to travel, though.
Incredible.
Can he still be president? Unfortunately, yes. Even if he was imprisoned for these or his other crimes that he is currently awaiting trial for, there is nothing in the Constitution preventing him from serving even from prison. Though that would be like the most fun outcome, right? Like pure chaotic hilarity. President from prison is the best outcome, I think. Can he vote in the election? Well, despite what you may have heard from other sources, yes. While it is true that Florida Governor Ron Puddinfingers DeSantis overturned a state constitutional amendment that restored voting rights to Floridians with past convictions, that only applies to convictions in the state of Florida, and Donald Trump was convicted in New York. He will indeed be allowed to vote this November. What has Trump had to say about this conviction? Well, we have the audio that he gave a small speech as he was leaving the courtroom after the conviction was read. So here you go.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now, from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Why should voters vote for convicted felons?
Are you going to drop out?
Oh, are you going to drop out?
The judge was rigged, the court was rigged, this was a Soros-backed thing, and this sucked, and that's like, oh, and by the way, this country's going to hell.
All the
immigrants are coming in, and by the way, did I tell you that the court sucks, and this judge sucks? Oh, and but again, the country's going to hell, we're the best, and the court sucks.
And may I just remind Donald Trump that the people that voted to convict him were a jury of 12 of his peers, and not DA Alvin Bragg and Judge Marchand and Joe Biden.
So let's talk about that, because this is basically what's going to be the majority of our segment now, is how Republicans are just blatantly lying about this thing. We already knew Trump was going to lie, because that's what he does. And the big thing that all these people are saying is that this is a weaponization of the DOJ.
By Joe Biden.
By Joe Biden. Even if you give it as, and you kind of already spoiled the ending for me, but it's fine. Even if Joe Biden told Merrick Garland to go tell Alvin Bragg to prosecute Donald Trump on these charges.
You still have to ignore the reality that this investigation actually started in 2018 with the former New York District Attorney.
And we are going to disagree, or we are going to ignore that for the sake. And we ignored that fact, and we're going to keep going.
Donald Trump is the one who...
And then Alvin Bragg
postponed this.
Right. And then Alvin Bragg found a judge that hated Trump with all his being. It was a jury trial where the defense also signed off on the jurors.
Well, you got to remember, his polling was bad during the presidential election in that district. So why couldn't they let me change it? Because have you ever, would that be a consideration for a judge? I need to change a venue because my polling numbers
are bad.
Were very low in this district.
Okay, well that's a good segue. Let's start talking about these things, because they're gonna get into all of that.
I did everything right, they convicted me.
I'm an innocent man. I fight for you.
He's very Jewish in that version. Oy vey.
Oh, no. Oh, no. All right, let's talk about what Republicans and conservatives are saying. We're going to start with one of our favorite idiots, Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, who tweeted out, quote, Donald Trump should make and publish a list of 10 high-ranking Democrat criminals who he will have arrested when he takes office. First on the list should be Joe Biden. Second should be Joe Biden's crackhead son. He also said,
who is currently on trial.
Hang on, let me finish this first. He also said, red state DAs need to arrest corrupt Democrats and prosecute them in front of Republican juries that already hate them before the trial even begins. I'm not saying we should stoop to the left's level. I'm saying we should stop pretending that we live in a country that no longer exists. So, okay, now we can talk about it. First off, this is why people talk about Trump seeking retribution.
Which he has openly said he will.
Absolutely. But all his supporters are also saying it as well. So here's the question. What did Joe Biden do?
Yeah, again, so like I said, this investigation started in 2018. Donald Trump's lawyer went to prison for this. He's the one who made those payments to Stormy Daniels. That was while Donald Trump was president, not Joe Biden. Donald Trump kept pushing this back. He kept trying to block the subpoenas to look at his financial records. If you remember that constantly being in the news, because he lost every appeal.
He did.
And that's why it got pushed back so far. And then there was the change in the DA in New York. That pushed it back even more. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Provably. Factually.
But Jason, when is Hunter Biden ever going to see a court?
Right. When are we finally going to get justice?
When are we ever going to see Hunter Biden on trial? Because I'll never know when Hunter Biden's going to be on trial.
That guy's just going to get away with everything.
And again, how stupid this is and how vindictive this type of messaging is. They truly believe that it was a part of the conspiracy that it was in New York. And that Matt Walsh says in that tweet I just read you.
Right.
He wants conservative DAs in like red states like Texas to start prosecuting Democrats for whatever reason because they know that that's a red state with more conservatives. It was in New York because it happened in New York.
Right. It happened in Manhattan. That's why it went to trial in Manhattan.
It also just makes me think about how Jack Smith, for the other trial, intentionally chose between DC and Florida for the archives case and chose to do it in Florida because he didn't want to be seen as this any type of partisan attack or him trying to game the system.
And because of that, that will likely never even go to trial.
Right. So, I'm sorry, where's this rigged system that we keep talking about?
Yeah, it's rigged. And right now, it's mostly rigged in Donald Trump's favor.
Right. Well, we're not even done yet. We have so much more to go. Totally rational centrist and not a ridiculously insane conservative, Tim Pool, our favorite beanie head, tweeted out a spree of crazy hot takes, including saying he immediately donated the max contribution to Trump's campaign. He tweeted out hashtag free Donald Trump in all caps, said truckers should boycott the state of New York, said that this was all pre-planned because the organization Republican Voters Against Trump put up billboards after the election, quote, too quickly. By the way, I actually got to see one of those billboards now. You know how they got them up so fast, Jason?
Digital?
They're digital!
Yeah. Well, Tim Pool's not the sharpest cue ball in the rack.
And finally, he simply tweeted out war in response.
He wasn't the only one.
Ugh. This is so stupid. The idea that this was somehow a pre-planned thing is ridiculous and asinine on its face. You already mentioned, we're just going to keep saying this over and over again, apparently. That's what we have to do nowadays. I'm going to lose my mind while we're doing it. You already said, like, this conspiracy is just based on statements and claims that are just factually incorrect on their face.
Yeah, easily verifiably incorrect.
And if you think it's just the stupid internet trolls and idiots out there who are doing this stuff, no. VP hopeful Tim Scott, the supposed respected Republican senator from South Carolina, said on CNN that our court system was hunting Republicans. Let's take a listen.
The president's son calls this country a third world shithole because he doesn't like the verdict. Is that what you'd call this decision by 12 Americans, just like you or me?
No, I'd call, without any question, Abby, this is the weaponization of the justice system against their political opponent. This is a justice system that hunts Republicans while protecting Democrats. This was certainly a hoax, a sham.
Is that what you would call this? No, I would. You said it was the president's son who said that. Oh, yeah, that's exactly it.
How embarrassing. Now, you clipped about 25 seconds of that. That goes on. And one of my favorite parts about that clip, I had the unlucky chance of seeing that live. Abby Phillip tries to question him more about it and says, wait, what evidence do you have that our court system and the DOJ are hunting Americans? And he goes, oh no, let me clarify. They're not hunting Americans like you or I. They're hunting Republicans. And it's like, sure, let me double down on my craziness and my absolute insane thing. He never gives any evidence of it. And he just goes off into La La Land. And he's one of the leading people right now on the show list to become VP.
Mm-hmm. We have another VP candidate, J.D. Vance. He tweeted, "This decision is a disgrace to the rule of law and our Constitution. Dems invented a felony to get Trump.
How did we invent the...
With the help of a Soros-funded prosecutor."
What does that have to do with anything?
He's Jewish. "And a Biden donor judge who rigged the entire case to get this outcome. This isn't justice. It's election interference."
Again, it was a jury verdict.
That judge donated $35. to Biden's campaign.
Well, and it wasn't like how like the judge's daughter is like on some kind of liberal advocacy group or something like that too. It's like whatever. But like even with all that, it was a jury decision that the defense signed off on. You could have all these corrupt things that JD Vance claimed happened, and still it would be the typical court case that we'd always see because it was a jury.
And during a brief respite from monitoring his son's porn consumption, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson told Fox and Friends that the Supreme Court should overturn the verdict. There's a lot of developments yet to come, but I do believe the Supreme Court should step in, obviously. This is totally unprecedented. I think that the justices on the court, I know many of them personally, I think that they are deeply concerned about that, as we are. So I think they'll set this straight.
And that's not corruption?
I know many of them personally. I bet you do.
Am I speaking to the void? Hello? What is happening? And why would the Supreme Court take this up?
Yeah, it's got to go a long way before it hits the Supreme Court.
But why would it? Why would it?
Yeah, they
take
shouldn't.
This up?
It's a state case. It's not a federal case. There would have to be. I mean, like, is it going to go to the Supreme Court? Probably eventually, because I don't see this winning on appeal anywhere else.
Right. But my whole thing is this unprecedented? Yes. A president has never been convicted of a felony before.
Yep.
But again, I think we talked about this last week.
2 weeks ago.
Or 2 weeks ago. The decision isn't the unprecedented thing. It's the fact that the president, or
the criminality.
It's the fact that the former president did it.
Yeah. It's the criminality that's the crazy part.
So yes, it is unprecedented, but the trial process was standardized. Losing my mind.
So our final question.
No, actually, I lied. It was not standardized because there were so many times that Donald Trump got away with nonsense over and over and over again.
He violated the gag order continuously through proxies.
Right. So let me rephrase. Actually, it was an unprecedented trial in Donald Trump's favor. Nonsense, man.
So our final question, and I think the big question, what does this mean for the election? Well, as Tim Pool kind of alluded to, this has brought in big money for Trump from his base.
It has.
Including, recently, a $100 million donation from Mavs owner and billionaire widow of Sheldon Adelson, Miriam Adelson, to the Preserve America PAC. It was previously reported by Israeli newspaper Haaretz, the oldest Israeli newspaper, that Adelson's condition for her support was for Trump to allow the complete annexation of the West Bank by Israel.
Oh, cool.
So anybody worried about what is going on right now with Gaza and Biden, it's going to get a lot worse if Trump's the president. He's literally bought and paid for by a Zionist who wants the complete annexation of the West Bank.
Yep.
And Sheldon Adelson also was Trump's largest donor in his previous campaigns as well. And remember that Trump moved the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem? I don't think that was a coincidence.
Well, let's talk about how we feel and how this is going to affect the 2024 election. What are your thoughts? So I got mine,
So, strangely for me, I am optimistic overall that this felony conviction will move just enough people to once again give Joe Biden a very narrow victory. But I do concede that may be wishful thinking.
I don't think it is, though, because I'm a pessimist, dude. I feel in a similar way.
And I do have your favorite, a couple polls.
I was just going to talk about the polls. New York Times and CNN recently recontacted a bunch of people they polled in that big...
2,000 voters.
Yeah, in that big poll that we talked about, was it 2 weeks ago or was it 3 weeks ago?
I think it was our main topic 2 weeks ago.
And it looked pretty good for Joe Biden in those results. So altogether, it looks like general support of the polling shifted away from Donald Trump by about a point or so, which is good. Donald Trump lost, I believe it was about 7 points of his voters to either Joe Biden or now unsure of who to vote for.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the biggest moves were really important. They were mostly moderate Republicans or independent voters.
Well, and I think even more importantly than that, it was low information voters. These are people who were not following the trial at all, hardly knew anything about what was going on with it, and simply saw the words Trump convicted on felony charges.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna help. And I'm gonna be 100% honest, like, yes, there are gonna be people like Tim Pool and even a bunch of like liberals who are saying this as well, who are trying to be alarmist, saying, well, the base is galvanized. The base is galvanized. They were already galvanized.
Right. Again, like all of that money, yeah, he got a bunch of money money.
Right.
But they're from people that were going to give him money and vote for him anyway.
Right. Tim Pool didn't miraculously become a Trump voter.
Right.
Even though he tries to proclaim that he's like this weird libertarian centrist.
He
was already a Trump voter.
Yeah. In the last election, he said Trump would win all 50 states.
Right. And that's kind of my whole point. The majority of the shift are voters moving from Donald Trump to Joe Biden, or simply voters just not voting for Donald Trump.
Right.
This is also why we talked about recently, right before this, the Republican voters against Trump, the organization, put out all these billboards and ads that say, I'm a Republican, I will never vote for a convicted felon. It's going to move people. And I think what makes me really happy, another concern I had when we talked about it last time, was I didn't know the reach of this. I thought this was something that could definitely pierce the divided mediums that we have right now. And it seems like it did. I'm seeing very random people and people I would not expect to be informed about any of these issues at all. They know that Trump got convicted on felony charges. And they think that's crazy, like in the good way. Like, whoa, I can't believe he got convicted. And they're surprised by that. And I think that's also what these polls have said too, is that a lot of these voters were surprised that he got convicted and then got really upset that they would support somebody who was convicted of a felony. So this is good for Biden. I can't imagine a world where this wouldn't be good for Biden.
Right. Well, so these polls are showing just small percentage changes. There was a Republican firm, Echelon Insights, who also did a recontact survey of people they had already polled, where Biden had a 2-point lead over Trump, where previously they were split evenly. And then we also had a Reuters Ipsos poll that showed Biden leading 41 to 39%, and the previous poll, they were tied. So it's not a ton. It's just 1 or 2%. But
it's kind of what we're looking for right now.
That's all you need. That's Biden did not win by a huge margin in 2020.
And for the stupid Democratic consultants who are saying, well, we shouldn't talk about this. We should talk about the things that people care about. No, talk about this.
Yeah, keep calling him a convicted felon.
You need to be saying this over and over and screaming it from the freaking rooftops. Because if you don't, this is going to just be another thing, add to the Trump list of things that he's done. No, don't let this go away. You have to keep on this until November. Tons of your ads need to be about this, because even though this doesn't affect a lot of people, this will by far be the most persuasive thing you have outside of maybe the abortion issue. I can't imagine another thing that would be more persuasive to low information voters than this.
People that don't really watch the news.
Right.
Yeah, don't care about politics.
And the one thing that I want to pay attention to is the Real Clear Politics polling average, which Trump was leading that about, I think it was like 0.9 or so.
Yeah, it went down to 0.4.
Yeah, that's a good quick swing. And that's going to, I think, swing even more in the coming month, because these polls were done fairly recently. And usually even stuff like this takes some time to really show in the numbers in the polls. But I'm really hoping that's going to swing even more in the next month or so, because if it doesn't, we're going to have to start worrying about, was it enough to get Biden over the hill?
Right.
And that's what concerns me. So I 100% agree. This was good for Biden. This was good for Democrats. Terrible for Republicans, which is why they're going all out and being crazy like this. See, Biden, by the way, do you see how Republicans are just digging their heels in? I need you to do that more often. This is how you make something very objective politicized. But this is why they're doing it, is because they have no other options left. They have to call it rigged, because otherwise it's insane to say, yeah, we're going to nominate a guy who just committed fraud as our leader of the country. I even saw other interviews with Republicans saying, being asked that same question, aren't you concerned that this is a bad thing that you're electing a convicted felon? And their responses are, well, I'm more concerned of the next 4 years under Joe Biden. They got nothing, and they know how terrible it is, and they have nothing to refute this. So keep pounding them on it. And even with all that, for media people, like, even we'll include the link in the show notes, even though Abby had someone like Tim Scott on and challenged him on it, I'm still going to criticize the hell out of her, because for any media people who are, none of you are listening to this show, don't give these people a platform just to spew their random BS. And if you're going to have them on your platforms anyway because you want ratings, hold their feet to the freaking fire and don't let them pivot away from this thing. In Abby's and Tim Scott's case, she asked him 3 questions, and he started talking about how much better of a president Trump would be than Biden, and all of a sudden the conversation just pivoted. We just forgot about the fact that Trump got convicted. Don't do that. Keep everyone focused and keep holding these Republicans' feet to the fire. Otherwise, this is going to be just another thing thing we forget by November. Sorry, I'm rant over. It just, I had to throw a little bit of criticism at the media because it pisses me off when I see the media just falling for the spin so easily and then immediately forgetting the big news and the big headlines.
And as a note to our listeners, we will be off for the next couple weeks as someone has a major life event coming up.
I'm dying.
Tune in 3 weeks to see who my new co-host will be.
Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
You don't look like a Native American to me, Joe. I am not either.
How dare you?
Yeah, you can't really tell by looking. I understand that, but I don't think. I can't say your name.
Thank you. Don't you dox me. I don't think someone who lives at beep 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 street. There's your outro.
Yeah, well, I have
you better bleep all that too.